This is Raceway Ministries Today. Thanks for joining us for Raceway Ministries Today. In just a moment, we'll be sharing with you the latest of what's going on in the world of Christian ministry and outreach through the National Fellowship of Raceway Ministries. Well, I would like to welcome everyone to Raceway Ministries Today. Raceway Ministries Today is the podcast platform for the National Fellowship of Raceway Ministries. My name is Roger Marsh. I currently serve as the Executive Director for the National Fellowship of Raceway Ministries, and we're glad to have you on board today. If you need to find out more information about the National Fellowship of Raceway Ministries, you can contact us. rogermarsh13@gmail.com is my email address, or you can follow us on Facebook. Our Facebook name is National Fellowship of Raceway Ministries, and you can go to our YouTube channel by the same name and find other podcasts that we have produced in the past. If you need more information beyond that, check us out at racewayministries.org. I'm excited today to have with us a very special guest. Todd Combee is going to be our guest today. Most recently, Todd and his group up in Virginia have provided ministry for a NASCAR weekend up at Richmond Raceway. Todd is a longtime associate with Central Virginia Raceway Ministries, and he currently is director of that group. He resides in Mechanicsville, Virginia, and he also serves as the director of Chaplain Relations for the Baptist General Association of Virginia. And that, of course, follows some pretty extensive experience as a military chaplain with the National Guard and perhaps in other areas of service. And Todd and I will talk about that in just a little while as we get into our conversation today. But first of all, Todd, I just want to say a word of welcome and thank you so much for joining us on the podcast today.
Well, Roger, thank you, and I appreciate the opportunity to share what has been going on here in Richmond. We had a great race weekend that just ended, and a lot of exciting things on the track, and our group was able to be participating on things off the track, so it was a good weekend.
Well, good. Well, I'm glad y'all had a great weekend. I know a couple of the race weekends prior to that, we had a lot of rain. I remember flooding in Bristol and delayed race weekends in other places where NASCAR's been. But from what I was able to see on television, you guys had some gorgeous weather. And as always up there at Richmond, some great racing. And I know y'all were probably busy off the track and around the speedway while the guys were out there doing their thing racing. But really glad that y'all had a good weekend. And by the way, congratulations to the winners up there. I believe it was John Hunter Nemechek who won the truck race, and then Alex Bowman won the cup race. And it was excellent racing, good competition, and a few heated tempers along the way, but that always makes for good entertainment. I want to ask you a question about Richmond Raceway, and we'll talk a little bit more about y'all's ministry weekend in just a moment or two. But thinking about Richmond Raceway itself, I heard that it was 75 years old. Is that raceway that old?
It is. It began as a local endeavor back in the day. It was locally owned for many years.
Okay.
Probably about 20 years ago, it became a bigger part of the NASCAR family and the France family.
Okay. Yeah, that was going to be one of my questions. When did NASCAR begin there? I recall being up there for a few race events and a couple of other meetings at the Richmond Raceway over the years. I remember an old iron gate there that says Strawberry Hill across the top of it, I believe. Do you have any history of that? Did the speedway used to be called Strawberry Hill, or what's the story behind that? Do you know?
Yes. Well, actually, the speedway was part of the state fairground.
Okay.
It was all part of the same property. And then a number of years ago, the state fairgrounds sold the property to the family that ran the track. And then state fairgrounds moved out of the area, not too far out, but out of the Richmond area, up into Hanover County and into county just north of there in Caroline County. So it was the state fairgrounds, and Strawberry Hill was that area known as that.
Okay, wow, a lot of history there. And Richmond Raceway having occupied quite a bit of that history, and NASCAR, of course, coming there and becoming very popular over the past couple of decades since they've arrived. I would imagine all kinds of racing has taken place there. If I recall correctly, the IndyCar Series used to compete at Richmond. Is that correct?
We did have the IndyCar Series for a couple of years. About 10 years ago, they came in for a couple of years, and that was an interesting and different group.
Yes.
The spectators were different. The cars were different. Everything about it was different. It was more the caviar setup rather than more of the country, enjoy the racing and see the dirt flying.
Yeah.
Originally, it was a dirt track, I guess, back in the day.
Okay.
But it has been a NASCAR event for many, many years now.
Very popular, I might add.
Yeah, in its heyday, there were 100,000 fans here.
Yeah. Oh,
and the track kept expanding its seating as NASCAR became more and more popular.
Sure. Well, some good history there, some good racing, and I know everyone always looks forward to when NASCAR goes to Richmond because it's always a great, entertaining racing event. And, of course, for the drivers, it's for some of them, it's one of their favorite tracks. If I'm not mistaken, it's a 3/4-mile track. And, of course,
it is.
Yeah, and a lot of the guys love the short tracks. Great entertainment there. Now, when did Raceway Ministries begin to serve there at Richmond Raceway, Todd?
Believe it or not, we're actually in our 25th year.
No kidding,
of
really?
Having Raceway Ministry presence. I moved here from Martinsville and was involved in the Martinsville ministry there.
Okay.
And that's a half-mile track. This is a 3/4-mile track. So when I moved to Richmond, some folks were here in our local association, and one man in particular, Billy Davis, and I talked about it. And we were trying to figure a way to get in the door.
Right.
How to have a presence there. And again, the track was locally owned. The races were run on Friday and Saturday. And so the ownership at that time said, we don't need a ministry here because we're not even racing on Sunday, so there's no need for a worship service. There's no need for ministry. And it took a while just to talk to them about the fact that a lot of ministry can take place in and around the race weekend and all of the campers that are there and all the fans that come in.
Oh, yeah.
And we had a slow start getting involved. We actually went up to Dover to the National Fellowship of Raceway Ministries meeting that was up at Dover back then and kind of felt our way through. And folks from Martinsville were there as well as others. And then we formed a team and just provided a service. We said, we're guests of the track. We come to help in any way that we can be of service to you all. And it just stayed on and began to grow and become more and more involved.
Wow.
Over the years.
Well, you guys certainly have become a part of the program, so to speak, up there. You mentioned that y'all are 25 years old. I think it was the second NFRM annual meeting that I attended. In my involvement with them was in 1999, if I'm not mistaken, and it was in Dover, I believe. So would that have been about the time that you guys were getting the ball rolling?
It would have been. We had already kind of talked to the Sawyer family. They were the ones who owned the track back in that time. And
okay.
We went up to Dover. Billy and I went up there just to kind of feel things out and see how other tracks were doing it, trying to find out information. Billy had this desire to begin the ministry in Richmond, and I came, as I said, from Martinsville and already had seen it working there.
Uh-huh.
And so together we just kind of birthed it, and it became what it is.
Wow. Well, how about that? Well, I remember Billy, and I remember several trips that I made up to Richmond for some race events. I went around town with Billy and spent some time with Billy and miss him. He was very passionate about it, and he loved his work as a director of missions up that way and loved the ministry out there at the Speedway. What about leadership? Did you step in leadership at that point?
I was involved as a minister in a local church, and I was involved as a military chaplain in the Army Reserves and the National Guard, and so I provided some help, but Billy kind of kept the reins, and then as he was unable to continue in that, I took more of the leadership role. I couldn't even tell you how long it's been, but probably in the last 12 to 15 years, I've been more in a leadership role.
Okay. Well, I know your name has always been associated with Central Virginia Raceway Ministries. All the directories that I ever put together and all the correspondence that I ever had in the past with NFRM, your name was always in the mix. So I didn't know exactly how long you had been in leadership, but I appreciate your dedication and your commitment. You obviously have quite a bit to contribute based on your experience, not only as a pastor and at Martinsville, but your chaplain experience as well. What does ministry look like there at Richmond Raceway?
In a typical year or this year?
No, not this year. I want to contrast this year to something. So what does it look like in a normal race year? Typical NASCAR weekend for you guys. I think y'all usually have night races there, Friday night and Saturday night is what I recall in the past. And when y'all step into race week and get ready to go for a normal race weekend under normal circumstances, what does that look like?
We have a fairly large footprint in the backstretch behind the track, right near one of the campgrounds. And
Okay.
it's also near where NASCAR has a sectioned off area for the crews and the car owners that are in a lot, and they have their camping area and it's gated off. But we're right in the backstretch.
Okay.
Richmond had a tram and they had outlying parking areas, and so the location that we've had for the last 6, 7, 8 years has been right where the tram led off, and we would see 70-80% of the fans. They came in towards the track and walked past us, and
Wow, 70 to 80%?
I would think so, yes.
Wow.
So we had a ministry to the campgrounds. We had the main site, we had a campground site, and then we had another campground site. We also provided chaplain services to the track and to the fan base in case anything came up in the way of medical emergencies, or we had a lost and lonely ministry that we would provide help getting people to their cars after the race if they were lost or confused or over-beveraged and unable to figure out where they had to go.
Yep.
We maintained that, but all during the pre-race and during the race and post-race, we had 2 chaplains on duty, and they would make their way to the care centers and kind of look around through the campgrounds. We'd be in the stands some, but not a lot. Most of our ministry was outside the actual track. And we provided cookies that were made by our local churches, and we provided water and lemonade. We had a children's carnival. We had race cars on display from time to time.
Right.
We had a little track that they could run little Hot Wheels, Matchbox cars on, and we gave away all kinds of Bibles and tracts and information, and we had a lot of conversation with folks as they were coming and going.
Good.
And we would have popcorn and snow cones for the kids and the older kids who happened to be adults who liked it, and we just had a great time.
My goodness, that's a lot of activity. But if you're being able to get face-to-face with that percentage of race fans, 70 to 80% of the fans going into the facility, what a great opportunity to interact with them. That's phenomenal. How many volunteers would y'all have on that kind of a weekend to help do all those activities?
We would have, on a typical race weekend, some would sign up for a half a day, some would sign up for a full day.
Sure.
And we basically looked at it as pre-race day, and the second race day. So 2.5 to 3 days is what we tried to man our ministry site. Now, we would set it up earlier in the week and get a big tent put up so that we'd have an area for the children's carnival and an area for people to get in out of the sun or out of the rain.
Yeah.
Typically in the spring, it rains here in Virginia, so it's always a wonder whether we're going to have good weather. This year was great weather.
Yeah.
But we've had a lot of water, at different times during the years, particularly in our spring race.
Okay.
And then we have a fall race as well. Those 2 big weekends in April and September are our primary focus.
Right.
And we have anywhere from 25 to 40 different volunteers to come and help. We feed them through our local disaster response feeding unit that's a part of our missions teams that work through Virginia Baptist.
Awesome.
And so
Wonderful.
they come and partner with us and provide food for us, and they also bake cookies, and then we have other cookies that are brought in, and we give out literally thousands of cookies to the fans as they would come by.
Yeah, I remember cookies up there, and they were good. I think I recall in a disaster relief unit or some cooking trailer there from a church, and I remember the smell of the cookies coming across the campground while they were cooking. That was
the idea. It's not that we needed more cookies, but the smell of the cookies was just great.
Yeah.
And they were the freshest cookies we could offer because they would come out of the oven and straight into the bags and into people's hands.
Well, in my travels with Raceway Ministry in the past, I often kid people and say, I make a lot of meals off of cookies and coffee. And,
there you go.
And honestly, I did. But some of the best meals I had like that were up there in Richmond for sure.
So this year was very different, and people were asking, where are the cookies? We couldn't serve cookies this year, and that's one of the first questions we were asked. No more cookies? And I said, not right now, but we hope to bring them back.
Yeah, maybe soon. Hopefully soon. Now, that's a lot of activity, and I'm going to assume something here, and you correct me if I'm wrong. I would imagine that level of activity and all the different things that you do has grown through the years. It probably didn't all happen at once the first year. You add a thing here and add a thing there, and it just kind of grows and develops as time goes by. That's very typical for a Raceway Ministries team. But for the benefit of those who might be listening to the podcast and maybe they're on the verge of being a part of a team that's getting restarted or starting a new ministry, how does it work with Raceway management for you to secure those locations, get those activities approved, expand and develop? Talk a little bit about your relationship with the staff there and how y'all have been able to grow and develop the ministry through the years. Was that through meetings, phone calls, emails? Do you have to submit application to the staff there to get an activity approved? Talk about some of the dynamics of how those things come about.
So we have a core team that is Central Virginia Raceway Ministry, and we meet all through the year, pretty much on a monthly basis.
Okay.
After the race, we'll meet and we'll evaluate what we did, and then we'll prepare for the next race. And then after the second race of the year, we'll evaluate the whole year, and then we'll take a little break over Thanksgiving, Christmas, and then start back up in January.
Okay.
Or February. And that core team is about 6 to 8 people.
Okay.
And then when the time of the race comes near, we start putting out our email requests for volunteers, and we ask them to sign up. We have a volunteer coordinator.
All right.
We also have a chaplain coordinator who works on getting volunteer chaplains who have to be church leaders. They can be pastors or staff members of the church or deacons in a church.
Okay.
And we ask them to have some kind of experience in the area of counseling and or dealing with trauma.
Sure.
So that we can respond to the need. And then when we have new volunteers, we try to team them up with some of our more seasoned volunteers. And if we have new chaplains, we team up with some of our seasoned chaplains to get them comfortable with how it works. And the thing I would say about any Raceway ministry or any missions effort is be flexible and be ready for change.
Yeah.
As long as we've been doing it, it changes all the time. And this year was no exception. It changed even more this year than perhaps normal. But we have moved locations around the track a couple of times and adjusted. And some of that's been at our request, and some of that's been because the track needed us to move.
Yeah.
And we found a really good spot, and we have kind of homesteaded there, but that's changing because things at the Richmond track are changing drastically now, moving forward. And so where we have been for years is not where we were this year, and it won't be where we will be probably going in the future.
Okay.
So we're getting ready to change again.
Well, you mentioned something very important. Things do change, and NASCAR is in the middle of big changes, and the big changes they're making are trickling down to the speedways themselves. And, of course, NASCAR now owns, I believe, the ISC speedways, which Richmond has been a part of that system in the past. So changes are in the works, and I would just underscore what you very clearly stated. Adaptability and a willingness to change is going to be very, very key. Now, do you guys relate to a guest services person there at the Speedway, or has your area, which I believe it has, shifted to a regional guest services person for NASCAR and ISC?
That is correct. We have a local staff that is here in Richmond. Dennis is the president of the Richmond track, and he heads up the team that's here, but there are many others who come in from Martinsville, from Darlington, from Charlotte, that all blend in for the NASCAR events because a lot of things are on a regional basis. And so our point of contact for guest services is Tim Southers, and he was in Martinsville and lives there, but now he's been given the regional responsibility of 4 tracks, I believe it is. And so this was his first event in Richmond.
Okay.
And, there was a learning curve for him, but delightful gentleman and very appreciative of our involvement and very open to what we were doing. And it created new opportunities and new experiences for us that we've never had before. So it's kind of unique. Typically, our ministry is on the outside of the track, working with the fans, and we partner with guest services. They also have another group, a band boosters group from another part of Virginia, that they come in and they handle most of good golf cart drivers and some of the guest services tent. And then our ministry provides an additional aspect of the guest services tents, and we help with certain areas of the track, special areas that need golf cart support. Some of the campgrounds, Torque Club, which is a special club within the fans.
Well, you mentioned Tim Southers. I've had opportunity to visit with him on the phone, and boy, I couldn't agree more with what you described. He is a wonderful, wonderful guy, very supportive of Raceway Ministries work, and really glad to have him as a contact person at their Richmond as well as some of the other speedways. I'm sure, like you have already mentioned, this race weekend was very different. and things are probably going to change even more as we begin to move along. I'm sure everybody is anticipating that, NASCAR is going to open back up and the crowds are going to be back at the speedways and the campgrounds are going to be full again and everything's going to be like it was. We may recover from the pandemic. The fans may be able to return, but I'm not sure it's going to look exactly what we remember it looking like a few years ago. So what did it look like this weekend for you guys? Things were different last year, very different this year, I'm sure. Compared to all that robust activity and ministry opportunity that you guys had in days gone by, what's the contrast? How did it look at this past weekend's race event?
So typically Richmond would have 50,000 to 60,000. That would be their goal, to fill the stands on the biggest race of the weekend. And typically on the day before the truck race or the Affinity race, we would have in the area of 10 to 12,000, I guess, fans in attendance. Right. And so this race weekend, because of COVID and restrictions, there were a lot of restrictions in place about a temperature check and wristbands that had to be worn and changed daily for entrance into the track. Right. And the campers had certain things that they had. Our campgrounds were 50% filled.
Oh, 50%, really?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So they did every other campsite.
Mm-hmm. All right.
And then for our truck race, they had about 6,000 fans here.
Okay, that's good.
And for the NASCAR race on Sunday, it peaked out probably between 10 and 12,000.
Okay.
I think there was about 12,000 fans that they were looking at. So not as many people. So the parking area was less crowded and less filled. Mm-hmm. The midway, which was usually bustling with all kinds of the trucks with all of the merchandise, they did have about 8 of those instead of about 30 typically. So that footprint was different. And they had some handicap parking on the midway, which was different for us. Yeah. There were only 2 gates open, the front entrance and then gate 40, which is the one that we typically man as a Raceway Ministry group. We handle gate 40 typically, so we did that again. Okay. But this race became different in that a local medical group had put together some clear plastic bags with some things for every race fan in it. All right. And we were asked if we would help distribute those. Okay. They also had put together, the Richmond track, I believe, or NASCAR had put together some children's activity bags with coloring book and crayons and things related to racing. Good. And we were asked if we would help distribute those. And I commented that we also had some Raceway Ministry bags for children. And the response I got was, "You're welcome to hand those out while you're handing out the other thing." Good deal. Good. Instead of being on the outside of the track, they asked us to be just inside the entrance of both the main gate and then gate 40. So very good. We literally were in a position with the Raceway Ministry banner and with all of these things that we were handing out. We saw everybody as they were coming. Oh, that's awesome. Got to speak to them. We had never served inside the track in that capacity before. Okay. And so wow. That was an open door that was brand new to us. And so where we weren't sure what our need would be and where we were going to be used, our goal was to be very flexible and open to whatever the track needed, as we normally are. Yeah. But this time we were asked to do some things that were very special. And I think it opens the door even wider for ministry for us. That's awesome. Let me key off of that for just a moment, if you don't mind. I visited with Tim Bird talking about ministry at Martinsville, and he indicated to me that with his volunteers, they had to kind of shift gears and come to the realization that doing guest service type things that don't feel like ministry can really turn into great ministry opportunities. The reason I mention that, it sounds like that's exactly what happened in your case. How did your volunteers respond to guest services type activities as opposed to direct verbal conversations with people about evangelistic ideas and that kind of thing? Were they enthusiastic about embracing the guest services, reluctant, or did that work out okay? So because the crowds were smaller, our team was going to be smaller. So we had about 12 to 15 this time that worked the race, and they came for all day instead of just part of the day. And many of them came for both days. So we had a core group, and we talked about it in advance, and we prepared ourselves to do something different. Okay. I said our ministry here is just to be present, and this will pay dividends moving forward. Yes. And what I found was it paid dividends, not moving forward necessarily, but immediately, and then moving forward. So, oh, that's a great insight right there. So they were all very supportive and enthusiastic and very flexible, and it worked exceedingly well. I was thrilled with the results that we had for the weekend. Well, good. Well, again, for our listeners who might be about
about to get involved in Raceway Ministries somewhere, one of the trends that we have noticed in recent years is a bigger desire on the part of NASCAR and Speedway owners to involve Raceway Ministries in guest services type activities, you might say. And while we may have been reluctant to do that in the past because we didn't want to just look like a band booster club or a volunteer organization, we really wanted it to feel and look like ministry. What we've discovered is stepping into those guest services roles opens up some real opportunity for ministry in the midst of it. And I like what you said, Todd. It's our presence there. Our presence there as God's people is going to make a difference. You know, whether we're checking temperature in people's foreheads or handing out bags with medical supplies or, just being there, being present. Our influence as Christian people makes a tremendous difference, and it pays big dividends in that when you build relationships with Speedway staff based on that, it opens up those doors of opportunity like you just mentioned, having that other plastic bag that has some Raceway Ministry materials in it and getting to hand those things out. That is absolutely awesome. I'm so glad that you shared that. Any other impressions about this past weekend that was kind of a weekend of ministry, hopefully coming out of COVID, but still with lots of restrictions and limitations?
Well, I would say this, because of COVID, because of all of the extra restrictions and all of the changes that the track had to endure itself, I had more interaction with the staff at the track than I've ever had before.
Wow. Okay.
Talked to the security folks over and over again about, how things were supposed to work, how we would get in, where our parking would be, where we would be stationed, and what we'd be able to do. Mm-hmm. So I got to know people on the staff that I had heard about, but now I was more involved with, and now I know them and they know me, and that has increased a lot. And I think those relationships can probably continue throughout the year, not just during the race week. So that's a plus.
Well, that's a great insight, Todd. We've preached this for years in Raceway Ministries. It's all about relationships, and you just hit the nail on the head with one of the impacts of COVID, getting a chance to build deeper relationships with some of those staff people there at the Speedway. That'll pay big dividends in the future for sure. Man, what a great insight. Well, I want to take a little bit of time today to talk about your chaplain experience, if you don't mind. Honestly, I didn't realize until I did some research on the internet the extent of your chaplain experience, but it's huge. I mean, chaplaincy has become quite a career for you. I read in one of the articles on the internet that you were very actively involved not only with the Baptist General Association of Virginia, but also the Baptist General Convention of Texas, which I have related to throughout my career in ministry here in the Lone Star State. In fact, I think Bobby Smith was mentioned in one of the articles. Bobby and I went to seminary together years ago down here in Fort Worth, and I know he's been involved in chaplaincy with BGCT for a long time. You have tremendous experience doing chaplain work, not only with those denominational entities, but also your work with National Guard and so forth. How did that part of your career get started?
Well, when I was in college, I was in ROTC, and I went to James Madison University here in Virginia, up in Harrisonburg. So I was in ROTC, and then I was offered a scholarship. And so back then, when you had an ROTC scholarship, you had an active duty obligation of 4 years. And so I graduated, I became a second lieutenant, and I was commissioned, and then I served on active duty for 4 years. And I happened to be stationed up in Northern Virginia at Fort Belvoir. My wife, who was not my wife then, but she was also a student at JMU, she graduated, and then she went back and got her master's degree. And we got married right after she finished her master's degree, and then we ended up in Northern Virginia for the last 2 years of my active duty time.
Okay.
And I'd always felt a calling to ministry, and so at the end of those 4 years, I switched to the chaplain candidate program. I entered into seminary down at Southeastern in North Carolina. Started pastoring a church at the end of the first semester, and I was also a chaplain candidate in the Army Reserve. And so during the summer, I would go off for training, and I would pastor the church, and then I would work on my seminary degree. So when all that finished, I thought about active duty. I was wondering whether I would go active duty as a chaplain, but instead received a call to a staff position to a church back here in Virginia. So I became a part of the Virginia National Guard as a battalion chaplain.
Okay.
And combined over the next 30 years, I was a battalion chaplain, a brigade chaplain within the division artillery chaplain. I was in infantry and field artillery. Then I went up in rank. I stayed in the local church on staff or as pastor, and I ended up with 34 years in the military and retired in 2014. And then this last October, I had finished up 36 years of local church ministry. My last church, I was pastor in New Bethesda Baptist Church here in Mechanicsville for the last 18 years.
Right.
And I decided at that point I was going to retire from full-time church ministry because Bobby Smith had asked me to come on as a staff member through the Baptist General Convention of Texas.
Okay.
I was already working with the Baptist General Association of Virginia as the director of chaplaincy, or the point person for a partnership between Virginia Baptists and Texas Baptists, endorsing chaplains and training chaplains and
Sure.
caring for them. So I'm now the director of pastoral care for our Baptist chaplaincy relations team.
Wow.
And so I work with Bobby, and I work with our folks here in Virginia, and I live here in Virginia, and I get to visit our chaplains and take care of them and their families. And we're doing a lot of Zoom meetings with our chaplains on active duty across the world, and that's been a beautiful way to connect with them.
Oh, yeah.
And since we can't travel so much, but we can certainly visit with each other. So right now I'm in a very good place. Feel very blessed to be able to provide chaplain ministry and to be a chaplain and to continue to serve. And I still have a very flexible schedule.
Yeah.
Which is really, really neat.
Well, first of all, I want to tell you thank you for your service to our country. I have great respect and tremendous gratitude for our veterans and for all the folks who serve in the military. And I just want to say thank you so much for your many, many years of service, particularly as a chaplain, because I know from people I have in my family and other friends that I've had who have served in the military through the years, all the stresses and all the impact that goes from being in the military and being actively involved on the battlefield. You guys as chaplains play a tremendous role, and I think it's probably undervalued, but you guys do a lot to help our soldiers and our military personnel continue on with the job that they've chosen to do, and I have a deep, deep appreciation for you, for sure. So thank you for sharing all of that. Honestly, before doing the research for this podcast, I had no idea the magnitude of your involvement in chaplaincy in the military and all the other roles. So, my hat's off to you, and thank you for what you do, and I know it's got to be exciting work, particularly whenever you're having the opportunity to interact with so many, many people and have that gratification of seeing your work make a difference in their lives. So, my advice would be keep doing what you're doing for as long as you can, because I know it's needed and I know you're well qualified for that. How about your experience as a chaplain, not only with your military experience, but also your denominational experience? What impact has that had upon your ministry there with Central Virginia Raceway Ministries, and how has that come to be a factor there in ministry at the Richmond Raceway?
Well, and I appreciate your kind words. Thank you.
Sure.
And it's been an honor to serve. I've been given so many opportunities to invest in people's lives and them invest in me. So it's a win-win.
Yeah.
From my perspective. And I never thought of myself as being bivocational, but because I was serving in the church full-time, but being a part of the military establishment on a part-time basis, that became a whole separate career and calling.
Yeah.
And so I was kind of dual-tracked all along through there. I see the role of a chaplain, particularly in the military setting, as being the voice of calm and the voice of reason. Our motto in the Army is for the Chaplain Corps is for God and country. We bring God to soldiers and soldiers to God. And that's true whatever branch of the service, and it's true in the civilian world as well. So for the Raceway Ministry, it's allowing people to see God in who we are, allowing us to share God with them. It doesn't have to be kind of in your face and dogmatic to the point of turning people off, as much as it is just being a reflection of Christ's love. And people say, why do you do this? Why are you here? Why are you providing rides? How much do you charge? And we say, well, we don't charge anything. It's free. Well, how much do you get paid to do this? Well, we volunteer. But we do this because of our love for Christ and our love for people. And when you're giving somebody a golf cart ride and they're on the golf cart with you, you have a captive audience for as long as that ride lasts. And the conversations just go all kinds of places, and people just marvel about it, and they're very appreciative and, for the most part, very respectful of what you're trying to do. Now, you hear some things and you see some things that, might not be what you would consider appropriate. But you have to kind of realize that that's part of it. I've had many people apologize to me for something that they have said
Oh, yeah.
in a conversation. They say, "Oh, I'm sorry, you're part of a ministry." And I said, it's nothing I haven't heard before, but I appreciate your apology.
Yeah,
those
there you
kind
go.
of things. So
Good.
it's just being who you are, and it's not so much what you say, although words are important. It's how you conduct yourself, and whether you're carrying a smile or a frown on your face, and the fact that you're representing your faith, but you're a guest of the track and the staff, so you want to represent that well along the way.
Well, now, does Richmond Raceway have an official chaplain as a part of their staff?
No, we do not.
Okay.
We have a list of 16 to 20 local ministers, staff ministers, and church leaders who have volunteered as chaplains for us on race weekends. But as an organization, we don't have an official chaplain.
So you're able to function within that group and apply your chaplain ministry just through being there through Central Virginia Raceway Ministries, I suppose.
Right.
Todd, what are some of the key things that you've learned in your years of Raceway Ministries work that might benefit other people who either currently are involved at some speedway with Raceway Ministries work, or maybe they're out there at one of those tracks where we're getting ready to restart or relaunch Raceway Ministries and this is all new to them, either from a leadership perspective or a volunteer perspective? What are some key components to Raceway Ministries work that makes it effective not only to the fans and the people on the receiving end of the ministry, but also in relationship to the staff at the speedways? What are some key things from your perspective?
I think for me, it's important that you know what you're doing, but you don't go in thinking you know what you're doing.
That is a great point. That is absolutely well put.
You have to have an ability to adapt to whatever's going on. You have to have a foundation of leadership or spiritual principle, knowing that's what's taking you into those locations and into that ministry opportunity.
Yeah.
But you can't go in thinking that you've got the answer and everybody has to listen to you, because they either won't listen to you or they can't listen to you or they don't have time to listen to you. So you have to be very flexible in your approach. We went into this weekend thinking, we're not sure what's going to happen. And the first day during the truck race, nothing happened. We just literally sat and were there.
Yeah.
And by the time we figured out what we could do, it was an afternoon race and it was an early race and there were fewer people there. And so our interaction was virtually non-existent, other than we talked about what we could do and how we could do it. We said, for tomorrow, let's plan to do this. And then things started happening and opportunities were given to us to relocate inside the gate rather than being on the outside, and helping give away things that the track needed help giving it away, and they asked if we would be available to do that. And my answer to the track is always yes. Unless it's something we cannot do because of moral principle, but they don't ask us to do those things. So to me, it's yes, we'll figure out how we can assist you. And what I found is that the more we were able to say yes, the more they were appreciated being there.
Good.
And the more the doors opened even wider and wider. So I went down the week of the race, and Tim had just arrived, and he said, I've got to go move some golf carts. I said, you need some help? And he said, do you have time? I said, sure. So I just helped him relocate golf carts for guest services.
Awesome. And
I think that was the first of dozens of thank yous he gave.
Awesome.
To me and to our group, just to be available, because it's a lot of pressure for him as well as others on the staff trying to figure out how to make it work. And their budgets have shrunk because the numbers have shrunk, and so just making it work. I think they were just trying to survive the weekend and provide a good race weekend for the fans.
Well, guys like me sitting here in Texas watching your race weekend on TV, everything looks slick, it looks good, looks like a well-oiled machine. And I think people don't realize how grinding and how nerve-wracking race weekend can be for a raceway staff trying to pull that off. And especially with the limitations that you mentioned, budget limitations, staff limitations, pressures, it's a hair-pulling experience. And I like what you said, to be there for them and to help them make their way through the weekend and pull it off is supremely important to that staff. And I think they probably, like you said, from Tim's expressions, appreciate you a lot for it. So I would guess y'all did a lot of that this weekend.
I think we built a lot of confidence and appreciation so that in September, if we go to a full racetrack with fans, the footprint at Richmond is different now than it was last year. So our location as a ministry will be different. And so now, where we were in the back of the track and had a great location, it's possible that our location the pump has been primed to move us to the front of the track.
Yeah.
and be in a even better location than we could have ever imagined. And if things had been normal, that would never have surfaced.
Right.
But, in my finite mind, I can't imagine that would have worked out. But, God had other things in mind and enabled it to work.
Well, God has a way of taking adversity and making good come out of it. I think the story of Joseph in the Old Testament bears that out to be very true. And it's applicable to us today. And one of the things that I hear you saying is just being faithful, being available, and being Christ-like in all your activities in relationship to everyone on Speedway property is the way to open up opportunities and for God to tweak things even behind the scenes to make some great things happen. And I can't help but appreciate you guys and your faithfulness and your dedication to the cause. Todd, any final thoughts that you might want to share with everyone before we go?
I kept reminding our team those very things that we've been talking about, just to reemphasize that we're here as guests of the track. We all know that, but just to hear it again and to say this is different than it's ever been, and we really need to be sensitive and look for those opportunities just to lend a helping hand and to wear a smile.
Yeah.
I said, you need to wear a smile on your face, even if it's behind your mask, because they might be able to see the twinkle in your eye and they can hear the expression in your voice. And so they need to hear positive stuff coming out of us.
Yeah, that's good.
And I think our team did a really good job with that this time.
Well, I'm confident they did. And, man, I can't tell you how much I appreciate y'all's faithfulness and your sensitivity to the needs there at Richmond Raceway. And, Todd, I just want to thank you for all of your great insights and for all the different things that you've shed light on in our podcast today. Thank you for your leadership there at Central Virginia Raceway Ministries. It's been a pleasure to have you on the podcast.
Thank you, Roger. It's been great. I appreciate your leadership and trying to keep all of us. It's like herding ants, isn't it, with all the Raceway Ministries across the country?
Yeah, it can be that way. But you know what? It's fun. I count it an honor and a privilege to be a part of it. And guys like you make it worth a while, I guarantee you. So
thank you
for what you do. Yeah, you bet. Listen, for our listeners, we have been talking today to Todd Combee. Todd is Director of Chaplain Relations for Baptist General Association of Virginia, also works as the Director of Central Virginia Raceway Ministries, and he and his team have been actively involved over the past few days at Richmond Raceway with the spring NASCAR event. And so we want to say thank you to Todd for his presence with us today. And I just want to say thanks to all of our listeners for joining us for today's podcast. And we invite you to go back to our YouTube channel and pick up some of the other podcasts there that you can listen to and pick up other insights on how Raceway Ministries works out there in the real world. And as we all travel down through the road course of life, as we always say, we hope to see you someday in Victory Lane. And meanwhile, we hope you'll join us for our next podcast here on Raceway Ministries Today. We hope you'll tune in next time as we continue to explore Christian ministry and outreach in motorsports through the National Fellowship of Raceway Ministries. If you'd like to learn more about the National Fellowship of Raceway Ministries, visit our website at racewayministries.org. Follow us on Facebook under the name National Fellowship of Raceway Ministries. Check out our podcast and videos found on our National Fellowship of Raceway Ministries YouTube channel. Meanwhile, thanks for joining us for this presentation of Raceway Ministries Today.